Hello again, Year 6, Miss Erin here for a topic lesson. We're on to our 7th session of topic for the ancient Egyptians, and today we're going to be looking at Howard Carter, a very, very famous archaeologist and Egyptologist, and you'll understand what that means in a minute, and his amazing discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. It was a fascinating find. So if you want to go ahead now, pause the video and put in today's date and title. Okay, our learning powers for today are absorption, because we're going to be taking on a lot of information about Howard Carter and his findings, and imagining, because you're going to need a bit of your imagining powers for the activity that you're going to complete today. Now, I'm just going to talk to you about this cultural and religious aspect. Now, that's something new that you might not have seen before in any of our topic sessions, but it's something that we're going to start building into our topic lessons, because when we look at a civilization like the ancient Egyptians, we can look at them from three different sort of viewpoints. We can look at them from three different aspects, which is the cultural aspect, so how they lived their lives, so their daily life, when we looked at daily life, how they entertained themselves, how they dressed, what they liked to eat, essentially what their lives were like when we look at cultural aspect. We can look at the religious aspect, so what did they believe in, how did they worship, where did they worship, that kind of things. And then you could also look at the political aspect, which we're not going to focus on today. We're going to focus more on that on another session. But when we look at political, we're thinking about how they ruled, who made the decisions, how much power did they have, was it an empire or was it just one country, all those kinds of things. Okay, so that's what we're going to focus on, the cultural and religious aspect today, because obviously we're looking at Howard Carter and his discovery, but his discovery is of a ancient Egyptian tomb, which was very much a part of their religion, believing in the afterlife, making sure that the person's soul could move on to the afterlife with all the things that they needed and things like that. And it was also linked into their culture because their religion was part of their culture. Okay, let's have a go at some total recall now then. So, one lesson ago, approximately how many years did it take to build the pyramids at Giza? 2 lessons ago, name one of the jobs the scribes were responsible for. And 3 lessons ago, what type of people were at the bottom of the social pyramid in ancient Egypt? Go ahead, pause the video, have a go at those questions. Okay, so approximately how many years? About 20, approximately 20, historians believe. One of the jobs that the scribes were responsible for, well, they were responsible for lots of things, but they could have had something like they wrote rituals and spells on tombs and sarcophaguses to protect that person. They kept records such as cattle, how many cattle were available, what the crops, how the crops were growing, that kind of thing. They wrote messages between generals in battles to know what was going on in other areas of the battle. All those kinds of jobs. And then what type of people were at the bottom of the social pyramid? Well, that was slaves and peasants. And interestingly enough, they made up a huge proportion of the population of ancient Egypt at that time. So even though they were at the bottom of the social pyramid, there was quite a few of them. So I've just popped this map in here because I thought it was quite interesting, and it sort of shows you the historical points that are in Egypt that are still sort of looked at today and learned from. So we can move right up from Upper Egypt, where we've got the Luxor temples, and we've got the Sphinx up here, the pyramids of Khufu in Giza. And the reason I put this in here because I wanted to show you that these historical sites are not just all in one area, they're spread out right through Egypt. So that kind of shows you the influence and the power that their religion had for them, because it's spread all across the country and probably even further. Okay, so Howard Carter. Here's a little bit of information about him for you. So he was born on the 9th of May 1874, and you could do a little bit of math now if you wanted to find out how long ago that was. And he was a British archaeologist who made one of the richest, and most celebrated contributions to Egyptology. Now, Egyptology is the research and finding out about ancient Egypt. It's the topic of ancient Egypt, I suppose, and learning as much as they can about him, about them, I should say. And his discovery was made in 1922 of the largely intact tomb of King Tutankhamun. Now, what's interesting about this tomb is that it was largely intact, and the reason for that is that King Tutankhamun's tomb actually got buried, and it was Howard Carter and several other Egyptologists believed that there was sort of a missing pharaoh out in the Valley of the Kings, a missing tomb that had yet to be discovered. And the reason for that is that it got buried. Now, when King Tutankhamun died, other pharaohs were buried after him, but their tombs had to be prepared. So when they dug out to prepare those tombs, that dirt and rubble was piled on top of the opening of King Tutankhamun's tomb, and it essentially became hidden for thousands of years. And Howard Carter and other Egyptologists believed it was still out there, and he managed to find it. So that's just an image of him, looking very smart, I will say. And this one here is of him and one of his workers breaking down one of the sealed doors of the tomb. Very exciting. So this is here as an aerial view of the Valley of the Kings, and this is essentially where King Tutankhamun's tomb was found. And you can actually go to the Valley of the Kings now, and you can walk around it and have a little look at where all these kings were buried. But this here is just a bird's eye view of all of these tombs. Now, all these numbers correlate to a particular tombs. We've got Ramesses, we've got Seti, we've got all these types of, all these pharaohs, I should say, that were buried in the Valley of the Kings. But Tutankhamun is here, number 62. So this one here is his tomb. Okay, and you can see there that these pharaohs that were maybe buried after him, where their dirt and rubble from their digging out the tombs for them would have hidden King Tutankhamun's tomb quite easily. So this one here is just an image of Howard Carter. Now, I won't zoom into the image because it might distort it slightly, but this is him with King Tutankhamun's sarcophagus, one of the layers of his tomb, of his coffin. And this here, what I can tell, is a archaeologist's brush, and these are used to sort of brush away dirt very slowly and carefully to reveal the details beneath. And remember, these artifacts, because they're known as artifacts now, are thousands of years old, so they would have had to have been very careful with them. This here is an image of Tutankhamun's burial chamber. Now, lots of these paintings and hieroglyphics often tell the life of the person that was buried there. Might even show images of their family, what kinds of things they liked to do, all that kind of thing. And would have been quite an extravagant room. And this is here again with Howard Carter looking at King Tutankhamun's sarcophagus and with a bit more detail. Now, to me, I'm just going to use a bit of an inference skill here, but to me, he doesn't look like he was a very tall man, King Tutankhamun. He was only around about 18 when he died. He only ruled for not even a decade, historians believe. And I think the reason why they think he died so young is because he was quite an ill person. So he could have been quite frail, hence why maybe he wasn't necessarily very tall. But that's me making an inference. It's not a fact as such. Another interesting thing is that a man named Lord Carnarvon, a very, very wealthy earl in England at the time of this discovery, was fascinated by ancient Egypt. He wanted to learn as much as he could about ancient Egypt, and he funded Howard Carter's dig to find King Tutankhamun's tomb. It did take several years to be able to locate it, and Howard Carter kept a diary at this time. And one of the things, or one of the quotes that was taken from the day when they sort of broke into, for want of a better word, broke into the tomb, Carnarvon asked, "Can you see anything?" To which Carter replied with the most famous words, "Yes, wonderful things." And he did discover these amazing things, and because it was so largely intact, things that hadn't necessarily had the chance to decay or to break down. So when you're looking at linens and things like that, they wouldn't have had necessarily the time to not exist, I suppose. So he found things like the famous King Tutankhamun's death mask, which I'm going to show you a bit more detail about in a second. It's in the Cairo Museum at the moment, along with all of these amazing stone carved hieroglyphics and things like that. And this is just a sort of blueprint, I suppose, of King Tutankhamun's tomb. So you would have had the burial chamber, which I showed you a picture of just a minute ago, with all these lovely paintings and things like that on there, and obviously where his sarcophagus would have been. And this room here, the treasury, this is where all of these amazing artifacts would have been kept, because people in ancient Egypt believed that those that were buried needed those things when they went to the afterlife, hence why they were buried with it all. Okay, so what you're going to do now is pause this video and go and watch the video that you've been sent the link for, which I believe is one of the first additional links that you've been sent. And this clip here is basically outlining the basic history for you of the discovery of who King Tutankhamun was, and obviously who Howard Carter was, what they found, all those kinds of things. And it's really important you're using your absorption power here to make notes, okay? Because you're going to need the information that this clip gives you. Now, when you come back to this video, these are the questions that you should be able to answer with your notes, okay? So if you can't answer all these questions, I suggest you go back and watch that video again, just so that you've got a really good understanding of the basic history. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and pause this video now and then go watch the additional video link. Okay, so hopefully you've gathered up lots of information from your the video that you've just watched. Another fascinating is this virtual tour of the museum in Cairo, where most of the artifacts that were found in King Tut's tomb, including his sarcophagus, are kept. Now, what was really interesting is that when Howard Carter first discovered the tomb, and obviously all these amazing artifacts, he was planning on bringing them back to Britain, and doing a tour around the world with them so that people could see them. And the Egyptians said that actually no, these artifacts are part of Egypt's history and Egypt's culture, so they belonged in Egypt, and they are in Egypt. They're in Cairo, in this amazing exhibition that you can actually do a virtual tour of now, and you have been sent this link as well, so it might be interesting for you just to go and have a little look. It'll just take a second to load up. We just drag down slightly, start VR field. I'll just make it ever so slightly bigger. So there we go. Here we go. We've got King Tut's very famous death mask here as you walk into the door. Walk in the door, I should say. And then you've got his sarcophagus here. Now you can walk around this whole exhibition if you want to, this whole room, but I'm not going to now because I don't obviously want to take up all the video time by doing this, and I don't want the image to distort too much. But it's really fascinating. Now all these artifacts were found in the tomb, so all of these things are taken from ancient Egyptian times, which are quite fascinating. But I'll leave that there so you guys can have a little proper look at that yourself when you want to. Okay, so activity time. Now this might take a little bit of time for me to go through with you, so I apologise if I ramble ever so slightly. But this is where your imagining power is going to come into effect. Now, like I said earlier on, there's no wills because it is up to you how you present your work from today's lesson. So what I want you to do is imagine that you are a news reporter in 1922. Okay, so you're going to get into that role. And you are reporting on the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb. Okay, and there's lots of different ways that you can present this information as a news reporter, and I'm going to go through a couple of different examples for you. So if you're thinking, oh gosh, where do I even start? There's three in particular good ways that you could present your information. You obviously just need to pick one of these. So you could do a radio breaking news segment, and I'll show you an example of that in a second. A newspaper report, which I know lots of you would have had a go at in other years in school. Or you could do an interview script between you, the reporter, and Howard Carter. Okay, now I'm going to show you, like I said, a little bit of a mini waggle for each of these. So if you're struggling on how to start, these might just give you a little bit of inspiration. So if you're doing a newspaper report, these might give you a little bit of a hint in the right direction. Okay, so you need something like the Daily Mail, the name of the newspaper, sorry, a catchy title, when this newspaper is coming out, and then these are the elements that are really important when it comes to newspaper reports. Okay, you obviously want to have your 5 W's, so who, what, when, where, and why, and potentially how as well. Facts, because that's what newspaper reports need to do. They need to report on facts. Quotes, so you could even use that quote that we talked about from Howard Carter's diary, where he said he saw wonderful things, and of course they're written in the past tense. So that's for you if you're doing a newspaper report. If you'd like to do a radio bulletin, you're going to be creating kind of like the script, as if you were the radio presenter getting ready to do your breaking news radio bulletin. Okay, so I want you to sort of imagine that you've got this theme tune music going on behind you. Just let it get up. There we go. Okay, so you've got this theme tune going on. Okay, and you are going to create the script for a radio bulletin. So that could be just a couple of paragraphs written down in your books. Now, radio bulletins are short, they're snappy, but they do have all of the essential information in them. So you could start it with something like breaking news: a new discovery has been made in Egypt by the world-renowned Egyptologist Howard Carter, and obviously you would carry it on. Now, like I said, they're short, they're snappy. In some ways, they're very much like a shorter version of a newspaper report, but they do have all that important information. And so they're about maybe a couple of paragraphs long. So you, if you were going to do the radio bulletin, are going to write out what that radio presenter would say. Okay, and then another thing that you could do, or another option for how you present your work today, is to do an interview with Howard Carter. So you're writing out like a script of an interview between you, the reporter, and Howard Carter. So it might start with something like, "Welcome, Mr. Carter. Thank you for joining me." To which Howard Carter might say, "You're welcome. I'm very glad to be here to discuss our findings." And then you would carry it on. Now, essentially, the reporter would be asking lots of questions, because that's the job of a reporter when they're interviewing somebody, is to ask questions. And Howard Carter's would be his responses. Now, these are a great opportunity for you to get creative and sort of take on the role of that reporter, all right, and find out as much information as you can and build it into your either newspaper report, radio bulletin, or interview with Howard Carter. Okay, I hope you have lots of fun creating your pieces of work. I look forward to seeing some of them. Don't forget to send pictures to your teachers. Just one more final thing before I go, which is this. Now, I wanted to talk to you about this because even though we've been focusing quite heavily on Howard Carter today and his amazing discovery, which it was, it's important that we recognise other Egyptologists. Now, you don't have to build this into your work if you don't want to, but it might be just quite interesting for you at the end of your topic sessions. Just go and have a little look at this website, because it gives you information about lots of other Egyptologists and their findings and what they've learned from those findings about the civilization of ancient Egypt, because that's what Howard Carter was really interested in. He wasn't interested necessarily in the fame of finding this amazing thing, although I'm sure it was lots of fun for him. He was mostly interested in finding out about the ancient Egyptian civilization and how they lived. That's why we're looking at the cultural and religious aspect of today. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there on the activities page. Hope you enjoy creating, and I will see you again soon for another topic session. Bye!